help with installs and help the sales guys answer tech questions and things like that, amongst many of the people here. And Fred on the left-hand side there is director of sales. So if you have sort of sales type questions, direct those certainly to him. We'll talk more about contact and all that here shortly. But if you guys have questions during the webinar, the presentation, you can, inside Zoom, there's a Q&A. You can post a question there. Feel free to do that at any point, and I'll try and keep up with that and get things sorted for you in there. Yeah, so what's today? Well, today we're doing lunch and learn, fix your fiber and cabling chaos. So kind of give me an idea of what we do, graphical networks, with our netTerrain product. That's what our product is, called netTerrain. What it does, so, and how it can help you with the cabling, and as it says here, the cabling chaos, so to speak, which maybe we can help you bring some a tool to help you manage your cabling environment. I assume that's why you're here and sort of watching this. So 30-minute webcast agenda, overview, polling questions, a couple polling questions, and then I'll show you some netTerrain. Again, what we do from the standpoint of doing documentation and so on. So go down. Why cable management? Well, as it states, without cable management software, you may end up with these headaches. Use ports that aren't providing service, cables going through trays, just occupy space, fiber strands, and a percentage of equipment that supports infrastructure that does nothing. You can read those. But what I find with currently, I think with folks that we talk to on a regular basis, or people looking for a tool or utility like ours, a lot of it's fiber, fiber cables, fiber strands. How do we manage those, create connections, understand what we have, if it's assigned to a circuit, that kind of thing. And then others, if you data center environments or whatever, core equipment, backbone connections, things like that, documenting those to help with troubleshooting as problems arise, right? So that's, a big part of what we do. And again, we'll get into kind of showing you that. So what is good cable management? Documenting, well, I would say, outside of these things that we posted here, of course, good cable management is the cable management that obviously helps you do your job day in and day out, and be efficient and so on. And that might mean no documentation of your cable infrastructure, because you're like, well, we don't have that much. Why am I bothering going through all that trouble and headache of trying to document things? That's not usually the case, right? And it's usually you're missing documentation, and then you have to go out in the field and track and trace and spend time, manually trying to trace things or figure things out. So good cable management ultimately is the cable management that again helps you do your job or do things efficiently or troubleshoot quickly and so on. But if you're kind of looking at putting some bullet points together, documenting network cabling port to port, hey, that can be a great thing. Maybe you don't want to overkill either. I mean, do you need to go every port, every patch panel? No, maybe just some core routers and stuff. Maybe that's more important than everything, right? Cable types, just being able to document, hey, the cable types, maybe links, stuff like that. Tracking cable pathways through multiple hops. Tracking power. So it's, cabling, usually we talk about those things and we think, tracking cabling, it's just about, Ethernet cables. Well, no. And in fact, today, more and more, it's about fiber cables and strands. But power certainly does come up as well. Do I have redundant pathways? That sort of thing. So device connectivity. So why cable management? Oh, sorry, I went backwards. Let me go forward. Fiber and cabling, being able to track fiber into the racks, doing outside plant, so going inside, outside, and so on. I won't bother you reading through all these. Probably want to see something. So Fred's the guy to talk to if you have more questions after this, or again, you can post things in the chat in the QA section, etc. There is a polling questions, I think. So let me start a poll here. Current documentation. I think there's just two. So let me launch this one. What do you currently use to document and map the network? You can choose more than one. We got spreadsheets. My winner's usually spreadsheets. That's always seems to be a big one. Got a lot of Visio folks out there currently. DCIM software, Google Earth. Coworker knows everything. Yeah, that's always a big one. A lot of Visio. More so than usual, I think. So it's great. Other. Others 28%. That's pretty high. Give you guys another minute. All right, get moving. So the big winner, actually, it was Visio. I'm kind of shocked by that. Followed very closely by spreadsheets, 57%. Visio was 63, 61. I guess we're almost 50-50 now with spreadsheets and Visio. Other was third place. Then coworkers knowing all was number 4. So pretty cool. And I'm going to launch this one too while we're on the topic of doing polls. Most interested in learning: rack and cable, outside plant, detailed vendor specific elevations, device backplanes, port-to-port connections, associated cables. There's some more stuff down here too. Simplify circuit design and management. Yeah, all right. I'll let you guys cook through that for a second. Another 15 seconds. 10. It's like rack, cable, power, connectivity, port-to-port connections. Those are pretty top dogs. Little outside plant, simplify circuit design. I guess that kind of depends on what you mean by that. But, all right, let me end this. I'll share results so you guys can see it. Sorry I didn't do that on the last one. So you guys should see that now. But I'm going to try and remember this. I'll do a little screenshot so I remember the polling results. Put them on my other monitor. All right, I'll stop sharing. All right, let me close that down. Let me go to top level. So you guys should see my screen. It says something about netTerrain. Let me refresh this, make sure I didn't time out or anything. And it looks pretty good. So this is the netTerrain software. This is our tool. If you've seen it before, you guys can, I'll share this link later to our other demo site. This is kind of a separate site I'm using right now. But let me just navigate to some diagrams and documents here. This guy. So I should start with, we're, basically a web-based tool that, and I don't mean web-based like it's a SaaS thing, although we do have a SaaS environment offering. You can also host software yourself, but typically the things you do in netTerrain, you do through the browser. So you log into your netTerrain instance, and normally what you're presented with, it's like starting a Visio diagram. It's just a white piece of paper kind of staring you in the face. And then you start to build the diagrams you want. You would typically use a catalog on the right-hand side, catalog of objects, and you would drag and drop objects into the diagram and then use the links to drag and drop and create connections. And there's other ways to sort of mass import data and things like that as well. So, sorry, I was looking at one of the Q&A questions. I'll get back to those in a minute. But so you drag and drop and you build hierarchy. So like here, I've got a university campus I can double click and drill down on and then see actually the campus elevation. A lot of buildings, different buildings, manholes, that kind of stuff. Let me turn off these big arrows for a second to kind of get them out of the way. And you also notice that I can, there's different map sources, just saw that. And I can come over here and say, you know what, I'm going to do Google, let's say Maps or Google Satellite. So we can switch out so you can, what the maps are really sort of a back image of what you would be seeing in this case. But back to the hierarchy, I double click and drill down and I can get down into like buildings and floors and rooms and that kind of thing. But to answer the question about like rack cabling or outside plant cabling and so on, let me start down here into a cabinet. So here I've got a bunch of cabinets that I'm looking at. Kind of the way we sort of view things, cabinets, there's like top down. So I'm looking down over top of the cabinets in a data center where I drill down and see, in this case, the cabinet elevation. And let me scroll down on this and turn these off. So, these are devices that you can see over here on the left-hand side. I can grab devices and drag and drop and build out a cabinet. That was already done, so I'm not going to do that. But you can see on the left-hand side the devices that are on basically what we consider the front. There's nothing really on the back side. It's just consuming space. But we do have some PDUs. So if you are doing power, you can represent PDUs and so on. Now, with respect to cabling, if I go into a device, you'll see this device. And I'm going to turn off the links for a second. So this would be a typical device for us where you've got multiple ports. You might have a slot where you're going to put a card in. I've got some ports representing power, data ports, and management, connection port, so on, console, I should say. So what you do in netTerrain is you go, okay, well, I've got these ports or these devices. Now let me go and start to add links and connections. And there's different ways you go about doing that. But when you do create these connections, especially connections that go from diagram to diagram, we create what we call an interdiagram connection, which is what this little yellow triangle means. Basically means that port 1 is connected to port F7, but port F7 is not in this diagram. It's in a different diagram. And if I double click, it will actually take me to that connection point, which in this case is right there, port F7. If I want to go back, I can double click again, this reference port, which is where I came from, and go back. And then I can see the connections between the two, and there's a cable, a patch cable that is connecting this. So what is this device? Well, it's actually a card inside a chassis. So if I go up a level, you'll see the card. And if I go up a level again, you'll see the device itself back in the cabinet. So that would be obviously a data type connection, but you could also have a connection that goes to power. So if I come over here and double click, this takes me from the power port for the device over to a port on the PDU in this case. So I know that this PDU socket 8 is connected to the power supply on that particular device. So I can see that through here. If I go up a level, you'll see that PDU again in the cabinet. So ultimately what it's allowing you to do is create these sort of these connections between all these different devices, whether it's power or data, we don't really care. You can kind of do anything you want from that standpoint. If you are ever looking at a device and you're like, okay, well, not only where does this connect, but where does that in turn connect, and where does that connect? What is that path, right? So if I double click, you can generate what we refer to as a CLR, and it shows you the path of an end-to-end connection. So for instance, this CLR, we call this the swim lane, for obvious reasons, where you got these columns of blue, kind of look like a swim lane. What does this thing mean to me? Well, in this case, it means that port 1 of this device that's inside this cabinet, that's inside the third floor of this building, let's scroll back down here, is connected to port F7 of this card, which is in this chassis, which is in this cabinet. You get the idea. So, there's the patch cable. This is an internal cross connect between these cards. This is actually a fiber cable that's running between these ports of these different devices. And if I go up, you'll see that I've actually left one building and gone into another building. And then you can see sort of the connections all the way to the other end, in this case to a switch. So it's helping me track and trace end-to-end connection, but it builds the path for me. So it's this, again, circular out record, I just refer to as sort of the physical path diagram, right? So, and this is inside and outside plant, obviously. I mean, it could just have easily been just inside plant, where it was just basically, hey, one device connected to another, what does that look like, right? So all these connections that you start to build out in C, I'm going to double click this. This is going to generate a bit bigger CLR. It might take an extra second, just so you can kind of see. But all these physical connections, how do you get all this sort of data into the system? Well, there's different ways of doing it. Manually, drag and drop, that kind of thing. You can bulk import, CSV. You can bring data from external systems, ServiceNow, SolarWinds, What's Up Gold, Nagios, et cetera, where you're bringing in, devices and stuff, maybe even links, depending on the system, from those tools, utilities, right? So there's lots of ways of getting data into the system. It's just a matter of one, do you have data? Is it good data? That kind of thing. So with respect to, so that was obviously talking a little bit about power connections, data connections, and so on. When you get into outside plant or inside plant and fiber cables, fiber strands, we have the ability to not only track multiple strands, so in this case, a 24-strand fiber cable, but of course, what each individual strand terminates to as well. So if I look at a strand on the left-hand side, strand 1, I can tell that it connects to port 11 of the 2 card inside the FOSC manhole inside the MH campus building. Obviously, that doesn't mean a lot to you guys. I know what it is, but in your environment, it'd be the reverse. You guys would have documentation and know exactly what all those devices are and so on. The point is you can track all these things, where I can go down to strand level and track the connections and so on. In addition, fiber cables can also be associated with something like a duct bank, conduit, micro ducts, all these other things. So you build this hierarchy of cables. So when you are asking the question, in your campus, you're looking at something going, hey, I've got this pathway or duct or conduit or whatever it happens to be, ultimately, what is that what does that in turn connect to, right? So you may want to run a report, or you may want to generate something that will basically tell you that. Like in this case, I can click on a cable, a high level cable, right, map level, like a conduit, or in my case, this thing called pathway, and it'll show me, the pathway has these conduits, and those conduits have these fiber cables in it, and so on. So, don't have a lot more time here, so I want to hit on a couple Q&A questions I brought up. So, someone had mentioned NetViz 10 years ago, a previous company, different netTerrain. NetTerrain and NetViz are, from a Functionally, you might notice some similarities. I mean, kind of like with Visio. I mean, you have this concept of stencils. We have a concept of nodes and devices and so on. So you should check it out. I mean, if you're looking for something that's NetViz like, we're probably very NetViz like. Splitters. Do we support splitters in a GPON? Yes. So you can do things like 1-to-manys. So you can have a cable coming in and then it busts out into 5 or 10 out. Things like that. It can affect the CLRs and other stuff, but all that type of stuff is definitely supported. Um, so I'll mark those as answered. If there's more questions, please Q&A them up. There was something in the chat, apparently. Sorry. Can you bring in data from Esri GIS? Yeah, that's a good question. So we've got an integration with Esri through, there's like a web format of Esri, and we're also looking into some other Esri integrations too. You should talk to us about what you're trying to get out of the Esri GIS. Because we don't have it today, we got some future roadmap stuff coming to help with that integration. Because we do hear that a lot, so it's a great question. If there's anything else, yeah, post them up, those questions in the next couple minutes. So kind of going back to the netTerrain side of things, if you are doing documentation, you want to document, again, inside plant, outside plant, whether it's fiber cables or whatever it happens to be. Again, you want to bring in this data en masse. As I mentioned, you can do things like Excel import, where you Excel import a sheet. There's a format we follow. You can get examples of that. We have videos on how to do that type of stuff. You'll notice that obviously this campus is laid out in a way we've got multiple buildings, connections, and so on. Doing outside plant, do you calculate distances based on GIS data? Depends. I mean, we can calculate, do measurements between points. So depending on where I am, I wasn't zoomed in very far, but origination, destination, total length, that type of stuff. In fact, I think if you hover over this, it'll give it to you in meters and feet. So if you just want to see it in different, besides miles, right? It's pretty kind of detailed there. So good question. Are we getting a link to the recording? Yeah, I think we do. We will send you the webinar recording link so you can send it off to other folks. We have a lot of webinars recorded too. You might check out the webinar list of recordings. I think that's on our website, but I leave that to the folks who send that sort of stuff out. I'm sure we'll send you links to get to all those things as needed. Let me go back to this just for a quick sec too, since we're running out of time. If you do have more questions, more detailed questions, reach out to sales@graphicalnetworks.com. You can call us, of course. I know it might be a little tiny there, but there's a 240 number. Go to graphicalnetworks.com. We do offer the ability to kind of sign up for a demo trial kind of thing if you want. Or just talk to us first and see if it's the right fit. We can do a more extensive demo for you. This was kind of cut short and very specific to just, fire kind of inside plant, outside plant cabling kind of thing. And I know it wasn't, I don't cover a lot of stuff there. But generally, hopefully it gave you a good feel for our product, netTerrain. Obviously, you're looking for a tool, you're going to look at other tools as well. The main thing is obviously just making sure it's the right fit, feels right from the standpoint of usability. Some people, like our very visual sort of tool and what we do, and other people like other tools because they're less visual. They're more, forms and that kind of stuff, and that's fine. We all have our different things we like. That's why we all, have all these different options in the world, because we all have our own sort of specific requirements. So that's all good. But again, any other questions and so on that come up. So we will send you the links and take care of all those things. So I'd say, thanks for your time. I've got 2 minutes. So if anybody's going to post any other questions, feel free. I'll wait a second here just to see if anything else pops up. And we'll definitely send you the recording, make sure I covered everything. So I think we're good. So thanks everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll send the links out. Well, wait a minute. There's a couple more. Yeah, cost, of course. Explain the pricing model, right? How silly of me, sorry. We kind of have two things. We're sort of object based, object being things like a building, a switch, a router, and then users as well, what we refer to as editor type users. Um, Objects, by the way, we don't care about the cabling from a licensing standpoint. We actually don't license for the cables or for what we refer to as subcomponents, like a port or a slot that has a card in it. We don't license for that. So it's really about the objects, like again, a building, a floor, or rack, switch, router, that type of stuff. Those are the kind of counts you want to think about. As far as what the cost is or what it looks like, you can get a feel for it by going to, I think, netTerrain.us, but obviously if you want more detailed quote, I would hook up with a sales guy and talk, because this talks about 2 users and 250 devices, really objects. So you can, and again, we do SaaS, but you don't have to do SaaS. We also do on-prem. Not many people do that anymore, where you can actually get software to install locally. So we offer that. We have different pricing options on, yearly and things like that. So, but if you definitely want more detail and more information about the pricing, please reach out. So, a couple other questions. Let me keep going then. Integration with monitoring software. Yeah, PRTG. I think we have PRTG in the next release, the 9.6 release. We're on version 9.5 right now. Import from existing KML. You can do KMZ import, KML/KMZ. So if you have Google Earth, you can do an import into a map, and it'll place objects. So you can always give that a test out in our demo environment. So good questions. Kind of came in coming in the fourth quarter there, so that's good stuff. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Oh, wait, one more. Yeah. So customer ONT would be a device in a GPON network, correct? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So if you want to document that ONT, yes, that would be an object for the customer. So that would be an object, that would be a license. That's correct. So, all right. I don't see anything else. Wait, one more. Oh, thank you. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.